I'm back! Did you miss me? So then, about 12 months ago, Frontier Developments, the developer of Elite Dangerous, started introducing ship packages as viable option for the game, and I rightfully called it out to be pay-to-win, as a horrible monetization practice. One that truly disappointed me seeing being implemented. I will take a look at it from time to time, but I don't want to return anymore. I really don't. That's how bad it is. And so, in a little bit over a year, I simply stayed away from Elite Dangerous in terms of making dedicated stuff for it. I let the developers for Elite Dangerous sort of cook, unchallenged if you will. Now, whether or not this new direction would help the game or company, or would it be a massive blunder, I would leave it up to them. So now, it's time to take a look at the results of it. A sort of retrospective, if you will. After a quick glance over at Steam charts at the time of adding pay-to-win mechanics, and today, active player base certainly has increased. So, does that mean that it was a good move? Well, for your average forum that's all the proof you need, really. But I think we can do better than some middle-aged Care Bear with the IQ of a slug. So let's take a closer look at the timeline month by month. March 2024. The first Titan Targoid can be killed with a notable player influx seen on average, with a peak player count reaching almost 8,000 on Steam alone. April 2024. Power Play 2 is announced as the long-in-the-works rework for existing feature from 2023. But more importantly, pay-to-win ship packages as well as FOMO-driven early access new ships are announced, first of which Python Mark II is released. Despite the new ship being available to FOMO suckers, the player numbers only jump a little on the day of its release. However, this is very temporary. May. Frontier stock rises thanks to Planet Coaster going for $2 sale, leading to the second biggest peak in the player numbers since its launch. June. Nothing of note takes place. July. FDev releases F1 24. It has worse numbers than the first F1 game, but leagues better than the abysmal last year's Squirt. More relevantly, Elite Dangerous kept on sliding downwards in player counts, almost reaching the all-time lowest player count on Steam this month. Here I'd like to think that Elite players are not as easily distracted or gullible as Star Citizen fans, and thus releasing a new ship is only momentary distraction. August. FDev shares rise, only to quickly fall, likely due to F1 release at the end of the month. For Elite, Type 8 is released for FOMO sims, while Python 2 releases for everyone to unlock through in-game cash. Due to this, on Steam, Elite sees a decent player influx. Also, Elite starts promoting and working with Just About, a company we'll talk about a little bit later. September. Again, nothing of note takes place. October. Mandalay is released for FOMO sims and colonization is announced. November. Planet Coaster 2 releases, and it doesn't go well, even to this day. As for Elite, Type 8 is unlocked for every player, and more importantly, Power Play 2 releases and is a relative success. For the first time, Elite peak player count reaches above 10,000 on Steam, a number not seen since Odyssey expansion release. And as a bonus, Elite goes free to keep on Epic again for 4 months through Twitch Prime. Overall, you could say that this was a real turning point for Elite Dangerous since the failure of Odyssey. December. The very last Titan Targoid is explodinated. Cobra 5 releases to FOMO sims, Elite celebrates 10 years, and I release my only dedicated Elite video in this period, for obvious reasons. And as a minor surprise, Elite Community Manager finally gets active on Reddit. January 2025. Frontier releases interim financial report. This will be important later. February 2025. Mandalay releases to everyone, not just the FOMO sims. Development roadmap for 2025 is released, but more importantly, the colonization update sees the light of day at the end of the month. March. Colonization continues to push player numbers, reaching nearly 7,000 average and 13,000 peak player count on Steam alone. These numbers Elite only saw before Odyssey and speak volumes of what actually matters to the players. Still, colonization is not as well received or as well developed update as Power Play, which later months would reflect. April. Cobra 5 releases to everyone. Corsair is released for FOMO sims, and colonization rose-tinted glasses are worn out. You start to see more and more critique being laid upon colonization and Power Play, which is reflected in decreasing player base. And finally, May 2025. Vanguards get properly announced, a system reworking squadrons, a guild system essentially. While Frontier Development stocks rise by a relatively incredible amount, thanks solely to the Jurassic World 3 announcement alone. But in the big picture, their stock still looks like this. So then, what are the main takeaways for Elite Dangerous after introduction of more pay-to-win and FOMO, the malicious and abusive exploitative methods? Well, number one, players only momentarily notice these new paid early access, otherwise known as FOMO ship packages, and don't really stick around. In fact, the very opposite might be true. Number 2, this very nearly was the worst year for Elite Dangerous according to Steam charts. Number 3, players will at mass return to the game with new or reworked old content, as long as it's above okay, like for example Power Play and Colonization Showcase. Number 4, Frontier's own financial reports indicate that the company might just be recovering financially as well as stock-wise. Now, here I have to emphasize that by no means I'm a financial advisor, and it's only my best attempt at explaining and understanding things of what we are seeing. Like, for example, stock increase in May. Both third-party reports as well as my own timeline explains this change. So then, did Elite Dangerous need to lean into FOMO and pay-to-win to save the game, the whole company, or whatever the fuck Kool-Aid chugging middle-aged dipshits on Frontier Forum claim every time you criticize this move? Or was this a cynical and further goodwill and gameplay ruining short-term move that TheYamiks was pissing and shitting about a year ago? Well, let's take a closer look then, shall we? Alright then, let's take a look at the impact of these pay-to-win and FOMO packages. Now, your casual forum dad will look at the anti-Xeno bundle, for example, and simply see the stupidest build ever made. And yes, these ships as well as parts on them, even though they showcase as well their jumpstart for something, are in fact trash. And in fact, all these packages are like this. Really, really bad builds. So they can't be pay to win, right? And yeah, if you have a thinking of a 5-year-old. But in reality, you pay money and you get a functional in-game item instantly. No manner of mental gymnastics will change the fact that that's the advantage. Even if you are getting the bad build, you are getting it and its parts instantly through exchange of money. But hey, if that, for some inexplicable reason, did not register as unfair advantage thanks to real-world money, how about no rebuy cost for these purchased ships with real money as an extra? So yeah, I'm not gonna go and re-explain everything about pay-to-win or how it works. For the full detail and logic and explanation, reasoning and more, go check out my full explainer, please. If you really want to engage in any kind of a dialogue and not just post retarded comments like, well, there's no winning in Elite, so it's not pay-to-win. The main question we have to talk about really is how big of an impact this monetization has had on the game since. Now, gameplay-wise, it's just legitimizing cheating. As long as you open your wallet, you'll always do better than if you didn't, be that for PvP or PvE. However, it is hard to quantize how much or how little effect this kind of a pay-to-win has, but what is undeniable, that it has an effect. Otherwise, why would companies sell it and people would buy it? Well, if it barely has any kind of advantage for paying money, what's the harm? Yeah, so this fuck you got mine attitude is what allows every game to get worse and worse. The enshittification is the term you're looking at. I also call it a gamer apathy. The problem with pay-to-win is multinomous. First, obviously it gives extra power to the player, be it saved time or outright resources, which bottom line is unfair and legitimized cheating. Second, it normalizes selling the functional parts of the game more and more. And despite it being a slippery slope, in games industry we've seen that this is far too common for monetization to only get worse. Third, because you already paid money for it, pay-to-win now has sunk its fangs into the game for good, and without drastic refunding, simply cannot be removed anymore, otherwise developers would face lawsuits. Fourth, it packages already existing parts of the game and sells it back to the player, which at best can be called lazy and greedy, and at worst showcases just how little developers think of the customer base. At least with cosmetics as lazy and overpriced they are, you get something new, something exclusive, but with pay-to-win, usually all you get is the same stuff, and all you pay for is skipping playing the game. And fifth, pay-to-win either forces a normal game to become more grindy, or capitalizes on game design already existing and being grindy, for the saving time advantage to work in the first place. Now, even if you don't care about how these packages impact the gameplay, the fact that developers are reselling the part of the game to you again honestly feels disgusting, lazy, and more so manipulative, especially thanks to the way it's positioned in marketing. Oh, jumpstart with Mamba! Oh, jumpstart with Cobra! And I'm not even discussing just how bad these ship builds get. Yet, they are presented as jumpstart trading, mining, etc. And this is not just about the company or the developer making a bad move. It can also be about you, the customer, being complicit in it. Now here's the thing, I get it. When you don't know what the pay-to-win is, or FOMO, how they operate and what effect they have on the game, or you as a customer, you can be forgiven for, defending it. However, once you learn what they do and how they operate, how they trick you, and still support it, especially to a few of my fellow creators in the audience. Do you even like games? Do you even like gaming? Why do you accept your favorite game, or even a game you like, getting worse? Do you realize that you're normalizing abusive and manipulative monetization practices alongside the company? Those of you defending, or even worse, buying these ship packages, you realize you are complicit in games getting worse. You are part of that enshittification process. You realize that, right? I really try not to insult the viewer, but we have to recognize that it's not just the company that makes the bad move fully at fault. Yes, the company is mainly the one to blame, but the simps or any kind of enablers are complicit in this enshittification. No, but TheYamiks, come on! Front-end developments have to make some money somehow, or else the game dies. And this sort of a defense statement I got even from my fellow creators, who honestly should know better. The whole, either we support or hell even just tolerate this sort of a monetization practice, or the game dies, is a genuinely retarded false dichotomy. See, when people first saw these pay-to-win packages, some of them jumped to the conclusion that, well, if they have to start selling ships, then, well, the company must be doing poorly. And this really is the best of a bad situation. It has to be done. And to that I say, you're fucking wrong. Now, we'll delve into Frontier's financials a little bit later, but even without knowing the specifics about this, instantly jumping to, well, developers have to eat too, is a laughable way to fool yourself into thinking that you're saving someone's job, rather than the company wanting to make maximum profit out of you. And besides, this is gaming. Let's be frank here, most companies tend to start small with monetization at first, and then just ramp it up until one day it becomes a norm. Well, you can say that, well, hey, it's a slippery slope, but let's remember, cosmetics have become a complete norm. Hell, even pay-to-win in many degrees, like for example XP boosters, have become commonplace. Still, even if it was a Hail Mary, we accept pay-to-win or the game dies. Now tell me, would you be happy to see your favorite space game potentially, which is not guaranteed either, to survive as a worsening experience, or remaining stalwart to be as good as it is, but die? Now sure, while TheYamiks is an extremist fundamentalist, I think that many people would agree that dying a hero, then living long enough to become a villain, is much more preferable. Because at the end of the day, we do remember the good games, and curse the bad ones. Besides, how can you claim that you love games and gaming when the only other alternative to pay-to-win you see is even a worse option? That's how far these dipshits are willing to go to justify these bad decisions. And I thought I was the negative asshole saying, well, you can do better. But then comes these idiots claiming, well, it could have been worse. Rather than hoping, asking, or demanding for something better, something that would benefit everyone, you resort to shit like this. Either pay to win or the game dies. Either pay to win or subscription model. Oh, and just remember that developers need to eat too. Oh, bitch, please! You know very well that this is a fucking lie. One glance over at Frontier Development's public financial reports will prove that notion wrong. So let's not beat around the bush. This move for Elite Dangerous was made to squeeze more profitability out of existing customers, which would be fine if it actually offered any proper value reflecting the effort and quality of the content they're selling. But no, at best, they are legitimizing cheating with a flip of a switch. Hooray! Seriously, how can anyone be happy about this? But hopping back to the whole, either we accept further manipulative and worsening monetization, or let the game die. The genuine clowns who spew this line of thinking fail to see the infinite possibility. And honestly, rather than dancing around the topic until you, my dear viewer, get what I'm implying, I'll just come out and say it. What about, instead of selling pay-to-win packages and FOMO access for extra profit, you make another fucking expansion with content that reflects the value and effort you put in it, and sell it? Say, for example, Odyssey Part 2, or something entirely new, like for example, Ship Interior Expansion. Oh, you don't like that option because Odyssey flopped and it was too big for development scale. Well, alright then, here's an option number 4. What about something smaller that does not require an engine overhaul? Say, something as simple and small as, oh, I don't know, a story expansion. Some voice lines, some guided quest chains, and maybe at the end of it you get a cool cosmetic as a reward for completion. That's an easy thing to churn out. And remember, these are just 2 other options in the sea of many. Hell, I guarantee there would be people, myself included, that would buy Elite Dangerous again, offline, if it was a standalone version of the game, even if it included 100 systems, maybe even 10. These are 5 options, not just 2. The whole dipshit, either we accept crap, or the game dead. False dichotomy bullshit. The limiting imagination of these clowns who swallow the company line without so much as questioning it is the reason why microtransactions and general shitification of our games, well, at least partly, happens. Oh, it's not so bad. Oh, it will keep them afloat. Oh, it will trickle down, like the semen on your back after Reagan is done fucking you. This acceptance of bad practices and slow degradation, especially for the games that didn't launch with these things and later only added them, truly pisses me off. Which is why I loathe pay-to-win, even if the perceived advantage is so minuscule. Now, what pay-to-win and FOMO are cheap and lazy ways to squeeze the customers for more money without offering any kind of real value in turn, which is why it's even more insulting than a $5 ship skin that is simply just a recolor. We have to push against this sort of a crap. The company is not your friend, and running free PR for them is just one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. And I will rally against it at every opportunity I possibly can these days. So, if you support my holy crusade in this fundamentalism, come join me on Patreon. Oh, and here's a conspiracy theory. About 2 years ago, David Braben stepped down as CEO of the company, letting Johnny Watts take the reins, and I wonder if this new push to squeeze more profitability out of existing players didn't come from his wish to make the company's properties overall more profitable. Because you see, in this time, Planet Coaster 2, F124 released, and Jurassic World 2 got so many content-filled DLCs for decent prices, while for Really Dangerous they didn't seem to know what to do really. So they decided to go the least resistance and resell the existing gameplay, rather than offering any quality content for the asking price. They simply recooked yesterday's pits and told customers, oh, here's our new product, fresh from the oven. Seriously, how could this not be insulting? But returning to Elite Dangerous, in this time Elite managed to regain a lot of active players, so this pay-to-win shit must have worked out somehow, right? Well, despite the manipulative and exploitative squeezing of the player's wallet, it delights me to see that it was not the FOMO ships or subsequent pay-to-win ship packages that brought people back to the game. In fact, if the early readings were right, they turned off people almost enough for Elite to sink to the new Steam chart's low numbers, despite briefly jumping up with Python 2 release. is no. The real reason why we see Elite Dangerous rejuvenated more than ever after Abysmal Odyssey launch is because of the 2 real content updates that didn't feature any FOMO or pay to win and instead offered something new and interesting. Powerplay 2.0, a reworked and improved old mechanic of the game, and colonization, a whole new gameplay mechanic. And I'm glad to see my suspicions confirmed that no one cares that much for the new ships. Sure, they are really nice to have, but what rules over everything is gameplay. The gameplay is king. Hell, as Powerplay 2 proved, you don't even need new gameplay, just need to make the old one better, and that is kilometers ahead of any new shiny jingling key. I've always said that I'm willing to pay good money for a good game. Expansion, or hell, even DLC. Now, for example, if Odyssey was actually given the time and development it needed, and rather than shorted out from Frontier's anus in 2021's fiscal end-of-year deadline, it could have been, hell, maybe even great. For all of us. Just imagine, no console cancellation and quality content, even if there wasn't that much of it. As long as it was developed well and reflected the asking price, I, the cynical piece of shit, would have nothing more than to say, well, there could have been more. And that's what you want, fans liking what you made, you pricing it accordingly, and what a surprise, they want more! This is also why the recent pay-to-win and FOMO methods are so blatantly greedy and malicious. They offer nothing of substance, yet expect to return a profit. It's insulting, not only to you and me, but to the hard-working developers who have to maintain this, following management's shitty decisions. And as for the snarky wankers claiming, well, they had to push pay-to-win for Powerplay 2 and colonization to release. To that I say, bullshit. First of all, colonization was a cut feature from Odyssey, while Powerplay 2 was planned already, and probably was partially, if not fully, developed way before the new wave of abusive mechanics were coming down the pipe. So now with 2 decent content updates, player base is returning, and the current dev team has garnered some goodwill, especially from me, believe it or not. I want these people to recognize that quality work, even if it is some old rework of an old gameplay, is still a way forward. And hell, if you find a way to monetize it as a DLC or expansion, it's far more preferable and fair than tricking and manipulating its customers into shelling out cash for something that's really not worth it and ruining the game in the process. But, hold on, was it a failure? Well, now we have to take a look at the money side of things, and here I fear it gives a different lesson to the Frontier, a far worse one for the future. But before we jump into the Frontier stocks and financial reports, I just wanted to mention their recent and increased partnership with a company called Just About. Now, you've probably seen them or similar companies post theme-based competitions with minor cash prizes for the games they've been hired to promote. That's what they do. A free promotion with a little bit of contest. Now, rather than your typical marketing company, these guys post a contest with cheapest prizes possible to drum up community effort for the marketing material. Frankly, I find this type of marketing to be pretty scummy that banks on unwitting community fans and creators to literally do the job they are hired to do in the first place. But hey, it's voluntary. And another scummy marketing tactic these guys are employing is making marketing promotions disguised as genuine articles about the game. Now let's say like this one. Clearly there's nothing wrong with it, it's just a cool positive article about the game. Sure, but the writer Alex here works for Just About, who's been hired by Frontier to make these contests, which makes me question the genuineness of these articles. But hey, since nowhere in these articles it's written that it's sponsored by Frontier, I bet it's just a goodwill of the writer to make these super positive, almost PR-like articles, right? But the bottom line is, these articles pretend to be journalistic pieces, but in reality they end up just being nothing more than current-day games journalism incarnate, where sponsorships are undisclosed, line towing is frequent, and fake positivity drumming up articles are spammed all over the place. And it all just reminds me quite a lot of this.
That's the news. That's an ad. That's the news. That's an ad. That's the news. That's an ad. That's an ad. That's the news. Oh no, wait, that's an ad for cat food. My bad.
Now, Just About are using scummy tactics, sure, but as for marketing agency, well, frankly, they're being rather clever. And unlike typical games journalists, at least it's not too hard to realize that every article coming from their staff or the contest is nothing more than an ad and a PR piece. However, Frontier's choice to hire these guys, well, now that just smells desperate and pathetic, yet still better what they did to their own partnered creator program. So if nothing else, hopefully now you know that anything coming from Just About is just a cynical ad, and if you still choose to participate in their so-called contests, just know that you're working for scraps that someone else is laughing his way to the bank, cause I guarantee Frontier paid them pretty well.
Stonks. Stonks. Stonks.
Alright, and it's time to quickly delve into Frontier Development's stocks and see how the prices had changed before we jump into the financial reports. Now, the first spike in the last 12 months has been around the start of August, where F124 released and Elite Dangerous got the Python 2 unlocking for everyone, while Type 8 was releasing for FOMO simps. However, the average stock price kept on dropping until November, when Planet Coaster 2 releases, and is a disaster in critical reception, and likely the reason why stocks immediately dropped and continued to drop afterwards. Until the very recent announcement of Jurassic World 3, which relatively skyrocketed Frontier Dev's stock. And you'll see why, out of all the Frontier titles, Jurassic World is so important. Still, outside of Elite Dangerous, the most played game in Frontier's own repertoire is Planet Zoo, and that one feels more like a cornerstone to the value of the company today, at least in the active player base. So now let's take a look at what Frontier themselves has to show and tell for their own finances. As of time of making, even though Frontier closes their fiscal end of year in May 31st, we only have interim reports from January 2025, which, while not providing a full picture, will give us at least some general conclusions. Now, the first takeaways as you read the general statement compared to the last year's report is overall profits are down, but very slightly so, which seems to be caused by greater expenses. Since we're focusing on Elite Dangerous, here's what Frontier had to say about it. Outside of CMS games, Frontier's genre-leading space simulation game Elite Dangerous, which celebrated its 10th anniversary in December, achieved substantial increase in revenue in this period through new story elements and release of both free and chargeable content. With new story elements and ships, Elite Dangerous revenue from both the base game and paid downloadable content grew versus comparative period, with PDLC sales almost doubling through the strong player engagement. So that massive increase definitely comes from the Pay-2-Win and FOMO ship packages, as expected. Also, according to this revenue, about 31% of the revenue overall is brought in by the Pay DLC, otherwise known as microtransactions. But what is interesting is the figure of almost doubling the profits. Now, for context, in most games with microtransactions, the revenue split between the game sales and said cosmetics or other microtransactions usually look like this. Now, generally, it's said to be about 50 to 90% extra revenue is coming from people buying cosmetics and battle passes, or functional parts of the game, aka pay to win, like XP boosters, instant access to stuff, and more. Also, it's very important that we don't forget who is buying these microtransactions. Now, it is estimated that only about 5 to 20% of the player base actually purchases them. So over half of the game's revenue is supplied by minority, and let's be frank here, whales and problem spenders. So in terms of Elite Dangerous, even though Frontier does not share the data of PDLC versus game sales, we can only guesstimate. But for a long-in-the-tooth Elite, I'd not be surprised if cosmetics and now Pay-2-Win would not comprise of 70% of revenue for the game overall. In fact, Frontier showed off this chart, and as you can see, there's a first strong bump on the Python 2 release at the end of April, then again a similar spike on Type 8 release at the end of August, and a massive jump in November with Mandalay release, Power Play 2, and 10-year anniversary. So then that means the Pay-to-Win and FOMO ship packages were a great success. Well, sure, if we look at Elite in a vacuum, and we also conveniently close our eyes and ignore the fact that microtransactions are tailored to exploit, and yes, exploit, the small fraction of the customer base. Now, I don't know what kind of a piece of shit you have to be to think that it's alright that your favorite game survives by milking people with problem spending, just so you can happily do your space pew-pews, but I certainly am not okay with this shit. But let's return to the report itself. Now, doubling of microtransaction profits is great and all, if you're a piece of shit, but that's Elite in a vacuum alone. Let's take a look at some other funny charts they reported in their report. for a fuller picture. Now here's a somewhat nondescript chart for each of their individual games. As you can see, Jurassic World games are the highest and fastest earners, hence the stock jump just a few weeks ago at the mere announcement of the game. Also from this you can gather the console launch brings in for every single title a noticeable jump in profits. So yeah, my console peasant brothers and sisters, ignoring you cost developers dearly. Anyways, you might be wondering, why is Elite missing? Well, maybe it's because it's not that type of a game, or maybe that they might be just simply embarrassed of how poorly it's performing. As you scroll down a little bit lower, reveals overall revenue for franchises. And this is where we see Elite Dangerous join the bunch, and yeah, you can see the flattening line right after Odyssey launched. Yet imagine if Odyssey wasn't shit, what mutually beneficial time would have it been? Well, anyways, here we actually see the result of Pay-2-Win and FOMO pushing. Now while sure it's a notable uptick compared to new game releases or hell, even expansion releases for rest of them, the short-term money-grubbing attempt is poor showing, despite apparently doubling the microtransaction revenue. Gameplay is king. And good gameplay is reflected both in value for the player as well as the company, both in the amount of players playing as well as just profits. Now lazy greedy bullshit on the other hand is only short-term gains. Now sure, these charts are very relative, but at least you can see the effect and not just claim that in vacuum it was a good move, because it wasn't. Also, does anyone want to claim that Elite is the title that still holds up Frontier as a company, so that's why they needed to squeeze their customers so much? While all other Frontier games got content and gameplay-filled DLCs, Elite, maybe because it was just the lowest earner, was given the horrible treatment of manipulating and tricking its customers for extra profiting, rather than truly giving a quality content release. And I seriously doubt it was just because it was an online live service title. Well, whatever the case, there's also another thing that we should remember. These reports, well, they can't really be trusted either. Not only they try to omit information about Elite Dangerous because it's the lowest earner, but this year the best example of Frontier's, shall we call it, misleading of their investors comes from the horrible launch of Planet Coaster 2. Now financially it certainly made a bump. Frontier is quick to mention that they sold over 400,000 units in the opening month, yet as their own charts show, it's not as a large bump as Planet Coaster 1 was. Cause yeah, it was a pretty bad release. Now, for example, when it comes to notably bad reviews, Frontier claims, achieved #1 Steam charts position at launch. Critic reviews are good, but we have work to do with our player community. Reviews are good? What, you mean these game journalist reviews? The same zero credibility industry shills? Oh, but that's not all. Significant sales of a predecessor, Planet Coaster 1, in December provides a great upsell opportunity, especially in China. In other words, Planet Coaster 2 was so poorly developed and released that the people rather went out to buy the first game instead. How embarrassing. So, yeah, oh, and this is not the first time Frontier was bullshitting their own shareholders. Remember F123? The game did so poorly, everyone including Frontier tries to forget it. When the financial report released for that one, these Brits were abusing their own language harder than a BDSM gimp, just to not make it sound like a total disaster. Seriously, go check out those reports of the day, they are hilarious. And so, what's the lesson in all of this? Well, let me spell it out for you and summarize. Pay-to-win and FOMO is a short-term gain at the expense of goodwill and making gameplay worse, and no one will be sticking around for it. Instead, gameplay and genuine quality content will keep people around and raise new interest. And yes, you can monetize it as well. Frontier are not about bullshitting their own shareholders. Elite Dangerous for Frontier is still the lowest earner out of all of their IPs, despite having second most active player base. Jurassic World is where's the money at. Planet Coaster 2 was a fuck-up. Console launch for every of their games netted a great deal of profit. The company by the name of Just About are using scummy but effective tactics, which makes them honestly a pretty decent marketing firm. Oh, and microtransactions bring about 50 to 70% of games revenue. Oh, and let's not forget that about 5 to 20% of the player base actually buys the microtransactions in the first place. Alright, so then let's circle back to the original question. Did release of Pay-to-Win and FOMO ships help or harm the company, the game, the players? For the company, well, it seems like a drop in a bucket. For overall profitability, even an extra dollar or a pound is worth it, of course, right? But compared to release of even a bad game like Planet Coaster 2, which apparently brought in 22% of their revenue, really does not compare in the slightest, it seems. So for this, they could have taken it or left it. For the game, well, pay to win always means that the game has to get worse in order to facilitate it. It also legitimizes cheating as long as you open the wallet, of course, offering nothing in value in turn. And all the while the new ships with their FOMO early access have to be made OP, or at least very powerful and capable, otherwise why would you buy it if, let's say, Dolphin or Type 10 would be released today in the same way? So the game gets more power creepy and unbalanced. So, for the quality of the product, it's a strong no. As for the players, the only people benefiting from and defending these ship packages are either those who don't know how these manipulative and exploitative microtransactions work, or people who understand how they work, hate the game and gaming in general, yet somehow still play it, while at the same time being happy that your spacey, shippy game is funded through tricking and exploiting tendencies in a minority group of your fellow players. Seriously, there's not a single person who understands what pay to win is, still buys or defends it and thinks that it's for the betterment of the game, for its future or overall gameplay. So overall, again, it's a strong no. So then, if adding more of manipulative and exploitative microtransactions to the game results only in worse game and worse player value, only netting a little bit more cash overall from the already misleading microtransaction shop, why put it in? Well, the only real answer I have for you is short-term gains with reckless abandon. What a surprise, a corporate company is doing corporate company things. But I don't know, maybe I thought better of Frontier to a degree? And you know, it's kind of funny that once in LaveCon, back in the day when I visited UK, I once jokingly asked one of the developers right in front, well, what if you put in loot boxes in Elite? And the answer I got was swift, immediate, and super serious no! And you know, I was kind of glad to hear that they actually have some standards, actually know what's going on, and what abusive bullshit that is. But over the years, they've been sliding down further and further into abusive territory. It all started with the addition of cosmetics almost from the get-go of the game, and I didn't speak up because I didn't know better. But once I learned more and more, and once they introduced the ARX points especially, obscuring actual value, and if you didn't know, Elite Dangerous actually sold microtransactions for actual value currencies listed on the page. But now there's ARX points, the monopoly points, to obscure and mislead you from how much you're actually spending. I criticized that, and now we have this. And I have to speak out again. Now thankfully, there was a little bit of light in that dark tunnel in the form of Power Play 2 and colonization doing so well to bring back so many people to the game, and all of it without exploiting, tricking and manipulating players, that I truly encourage more of this. Sure, you can do better, but for the start, this is really nice. Do more of this. And hell, find a way to make another expansion for Elite, or anything that does not include FOMO or pay-to-win bullshit. Hell, give us an offline mode game and mod support. I'll buy that in a blink of an eye. Elite can still improve, and these developers behind the scenes have showcased that they can deliver something that even I deem not good, but above okay and decent. So if there's only one takeaway from today's rant, stop this bullshit pay-to-win garbage and make good content. People will even spend money for it as long as it reflects the quality and effort. After all, it was the main reason why Odyssey failed. It wasn't the price, even the amount of content, but the quality. So please, stop this exploitative shit for fuck's sakes. Do not ruin further the good momentum you have. And then again, yet every time I glance on Twitter/X, I see Elite Dangerous hawking the pay-to-win bullshit packages. But anyways, if you agree, do drop a like and maybe a subscribe, and more importantly, well, share this with pretty much everyone you can find. Hell, even the game-hating forum dads, or if you can get the ear of the developers, them too. Elite still can do a lot with little staff and effort given, and now I'm actually interested to see where they go because of Power Play and colonization. Also, if you too despise pay-to-win and these horrible industry practices, drop a buck or two on my Patreon as I fight against this shitty PR practice. Your support really does help me, and more importantly, it does keep my ass in check and motivates me to dispel this bullshit, both in the games journalism as well as the PR speak from the companies. Oh, and I think it's pretty clear, but if you ever wondered
Why is TheYamiks shitting on Elite, Star Citizen, and pretty much every other game out there?
or whatever the fuck the forum devs are claiming I do these days, well, regardless, remember, my loyalties are to you, you beautiful fuckers. You keep the vitriol going, and I'm glad to continue it, to call out this bullshit. So, do support me if you can, not just simply watch, in which case, it works. So then, here's to you, you beautiful fuckers, and as for Elite Dangerous, well, I guess the colonization and power play makes me want to see where this whole thing goes and what the new dev team really is doing. And hey, there are a few extra ships now to review as well, so look forward to that. However, on the side, still pushing the pay-to-win is kinda souring the taste of pretty much anything remotely good they're doing, so at this point, we'll see where it goes from now on.